You doing, Sarah? All right.
I was muted. I'm okay. How are
That's
you?
all right. Oh, not too bad. I'm glad that the academic semester is over.
Oh, that's good.
This is actually finals week, but I don't
Okay.
have any finals to give. But I'm glad that this course has 3 students instead of 350. So yeah, try doing Zoom with 350 students. That is awesome.
I don't even like doing Zoom with like 5 people for work. So
Yeah, I'm honestly done with Zoom. But for stuff like this, I mean, instead of having like, I don't know where you're located at. I'm in Morgantown, West Virginia.
I'm in Pittsburgh.
So yeah, I mean, I was
and
in Pittsburgh.
Occasionally in Morgantown. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just in Pittsburgh earlier today. My son went to the doctor's office, and I wouldn't expect anybody to drive 70 miles for 3 hours. It's almost like a waste. 3 hour or 70 miles one way for 3 hours. Now, if you made a day of it, that might be like my wife and I. We made a day of it in Pittsburgh, but it's rough doing it.
It is. My boyfriend is in Morgantown, so I do the drive a lot, but
cool.
For a class, not so much, probably.
Sorry, I got a cough going on that I just can't shake. I've had it for over a month, so I apologize. I'll try to catch myself and mute myself, but so that Caleb, is that it, or I just see LeCook / Caleb? Is that which one do you? Yes. So, I mean, like when I've had students, sometimes they log in with someone else's account, so sometimes the name's not accurate. I just check in here because I don't have a Caleb or LeCook on my roster. That's why I was kind of curious.
You're on mute.
Yeah, you're muted. So okay, yeah, take your time. We still got a few minutes before class starts, so.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Joseph Kitzmiller.
Oh, okay, all right.
Cool. Yeah, I'm the annoying one that sends all the emails.
I send some emails too. You're not the only one.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Honestly, I have not checked one email today, which is like almost like a holiday for me. I mean, it's way too many hours of emails being virtual learning and stuff like that with students, and they're becoming more and more proficient with emails and sending emails in a style like it's a text message. It's like, what are you saying? Because
I thought WVU went back to in-person teaching.
Some classes are in person, but the vast majority for this past semester, which just ended and they're in their finals weeks now, we're online. In the fall, the plan is currently to go back to normal with in-person classes. At least that's the plan. So hopefully that continues being the plan. They're now asking for everybody to report their vaccinations, and if they can get over 75% reported that they've been vaccinated, they're pretty much going to open everything up on campus.
Really?
Back to its normal, like nothing ever happened, kind of. If this
is all made up anyways, right? This whole COVID, this is all made up.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been personally affected, so since it didn't have bothered me, I mean, it's all fake. I mean, I didn't get personally affected.
I think my family, we all had it back in December of 2019, right before the December, January of 2020. I think we all had it. We all got really sick here in this house. Well, then it hit the fan. So,
well, I'm glad, Joseph, you and your family made it through.
Thank you.
And I see Derek has joined us, if in spirit, if not in video. So.
Hey guys, I had kind of a conflict this evening, so I'm multitasking, but I'm here.
All right. Well, glad to have you, Derek. That's one thing I wanted to bring up was and ask, is there a better night for you guys? I'm open to pretty much any night, except for Friday night. That's kind of my wife and my, our time together. But if there's a better night for you guys, I'm flexible. We can change it.
I'm actually good with Wednesday. That'd be my vote if we have a vote.
Yeah, I'm still good with Wednesday. Just this first one was a little quirky.
Yeah. Joseph?
Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday would be appreciated. Wednesday's a rough night.
Okay. How about Sarah, Derek? Any of those days work for you guys?
If I had to switch from Wednesday, I'd say probably Tuesday.
Tuesday I finish up work right at 6, so I can hop on right after work. Any other day is good. So I can make Tuesday work.
All right. I mean, Derek, if you're okay with that, we can switch it to Tuesday from next week moving forward.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move it to Tuesday next week all right. So let me make a note of that. Otherwise I will forget. All right.
Thanks everybody for switching to Tuesday.
You're welcome from my end. That was my intention, was to set the first day and then let you guys, kind of dictate what day. At least that's how I foresaw this class going, because I know you guys are working professionals and it can be rough sometimes. So,
well, and not having to drive to Morgantown helps.
Yeah. I mean, I was in Pittsburgh today. As I was telling Sarah earlier, my son had a doctor's appointment, and I couldn't see driving an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on traffic, just to go to a 3-hour class and then making that reverse trip if you were in the Pittsburgh area. So, but I have done it in previous life, before working for WVU. So, but you guys are here to get into project management professional, get the certification, at least get the knowledge, and then do a little bit more studying and then go for your test. So a couple assumptions that I've kind of made is that you guys have some background in project management and you guys are just looking to further develop and then your knowledge, at least the book knowledge. Now there's the book knowledge and then how it's really done. Unfortunately for the test, we need to get the book knowledge and then we move on to the test and then you guys are certified. And then, hopefully you get a promotion or a salary increase. And, life is rainbows and unicorns, right? Sure. Hopefully. So, is that kind of a good assumption, or are you guys looking to get into project management, or am I completely off base?
So I don't formally do it now. So the terms reading in the book was kind of a lot more than I'm used to. I'm much more used to just doing it in real life and getting the project done. So just looking for, like you said, the formality to be able to pass that test and to just add that to the resume.
Yeah. So I'm taking a look real quick at your pre-test scores. Now, it doesn't tell me if you guys actually completed the pre-test. It's supposed to kind of give you a little taste of what a real exam would be like. And it honestly, it probably felt like it sucked, right? It just seemed like it would never end. Yeah, and that's how the test it feels like. But the time flies when you're sitting in there, because hopefully when you're in that test, it's like, the questions and it's just flying. But when you get through the test, don't just submit it and then say, raise your hand for them to come over to you and escort you out. Go back to the first question and start reviewing everything. Use up the full time of your exam. But we'll talk more about that as we get towards the end. Now, I have a 1-year-old son, so you guys might overhear him through the microphone of him crying or whatnot. So I apologize for that. One of the downsides of spending way too much on a microphone for my computer. But looking at your scores, these are the scores I expected you guys to get. It's when I did my prep for scores, I actually scored lower than you guys did. So don't feel bad about this because you guys can only get better. All right. So you guys can only get better. So when you guys take there's a practice exam that I'm going to encourage you guys to take at the end. You want to score above an 80 on that practice exam at the end. And if you can do that, let's say at least 3 times, I would say you're ready to take that actual certification exam. Because the certification exam, if I recall correctly, now I got my PMP back in 2017. So 70% was a passing score then. And so when I was doing my practice exams, I was going for 80. But I was kind of disappointed because at the end, they gave me this little printout that said you were either above average, or below, or it was like above standard, standard, below standard. It was some scale like that. But they've revamped the test. So hopefully all you guys pass. At least that's my goal. And that's your guys' goal too, right? All right. So, and we'll talk a little bit today about the requirements to take the exam because there's some experience requirements. There's an education requirements, whether you have a bachelor's degree or not. And with that, if you don't have the PMP level of experience, there is another exam you can take. It's the Certified Associate in Project Management, CAPM, that has a less of a hurdle in its experience requirement. So that's if you don't meet the number of hours required. I believe it says 3 years. When I took the test, it said 4,500 hours of project management experience. So, but we'll get into that. So let me go ahead and hopefully my computer will work with me today. I think my computer wanted to quit after the students, after teaching so many students over the semester. All right, so I'm going to share my screen once okay, where did it go? Okay, so this is kind of a brief overview of the learning system for a project management professional through CertWise here. And this is the system that WVU uses. And you guys have probably talked to Dallas or Scott about this program or about this course, and they might have talked to you about this program that they use. You guys want to do introductions? Some people do, some people don't. I'd like to know the reason you're taking the course, if nothing else.
Sure. My name is Derek Garrett. If you say it together, it kind of blends in. So Derek Garrett. I work for a company called Multiview Financial, and I was a project manager up until a couple weeks ago. Now I'm transitioning into a product manager. But even though I'm making the transition to a different job, I would still like to take this course to work on my certification, just to further educate myself and differentiate myself, because you never know what's going to happen, like a pandemic or whatever comes next. So anything to make myself better.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of knowledge that you'll learn from this that you can take into a product management role also, because you'll see a lot of the same processes used. So yeah. and you might be managing multiple products, which would be kind of the same thing as being a program manager, which is the next step above a project manager. And there's even another step above program managers, which is a portfolio manager. So yeah, awesome, Derek. So the financial industry. So I'm going to have to, when I give examples, I'm going to try to remember these industries to make it more relevant for you guys. So let's see, who would like to go next?
Ladies first.
Well, aren't you sweet? My name is Sarah. I currently work in oil and gas. It's a company called Equitrans Midstream. Do obviously a lot of midstream work, so pipelines, compressor stations, that type of stuff. I do a lot of environmental work right now. I'm a senior environmental coordinator. So it's a lot of legal requirements and managing regulatory items, different projects, things like that. I am taking this course because I think it's good to have some sort of professional certification. As I mentioned before, I kind of already do a lot of project management. I just don't have the formal training and know all of the fancy words just yet. And my company also agreed to pay for it. So here I am.
Excellent. Yeah. So oil and gas, and my wife is an environmental engineer. So I understand very little about what it is, but it sounds like, to me at least, a majority of your job might be compliance.
It's a big part of it. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, in project management, we have a lot of compliance that we deal with also, especially as a project manager, because essentially the project buck stops with us. We might delegate, but we're ultimately responsible. So, yeah, cool. All right. Joseph, how about yourself?
Born and raised here in Morgantown, moved away for a while. I used to work in the chemical industry as a project engineer, doing process improvements and that kind of stuff. And ended up getting a job at Mylan Pharmaceuticals, where I'm an equipment qualification validation engineer. But that's only been maybe 20 to 30% of my time and responsibilities. They ended up making me do a lot of projects for the department or for the site, and not on the capital expenditure side, but more quality compliance kind of issues. So me personally, why I'm taking this class is I just like to enhance my skills. Is really what I like to do. Broaden my horizons a little bit. Here in the future, I hope to get back in either more of an industrial setting instead of pharmaceuticals, like chemical, power, utilities, or oil and gas. I'm hoping to stay here in the area instead of move, since our facility is shutting down here in Morgantown. So for me, taking the class, I'm just really want to broaden my horizons and just enhance what skills I currently have. I have to say that this is reading over chapters 1 and 2 in the book. I really don't understand some of the terminology. It's a little bit different. I speak more in layman's terms, and this is a little bit different for me. I've been out of school for a while now, so going back to school and especially doing it online is a little bit different.
Yeah, it can be tough. Now, some of the terms I might not know off the top of my head either. So you guys may stump me just as much as I stump you guys. So I will go ahead and say right now, I will not have all the answers you guys are asking. And I will be the first one to admit that, just as I am now. However, I will get you guys the answers, and I will send it by email to all you guys, or save it for the next meeting, whichever level of priority the answer it needs to get to you guys. But Joseph, being in the chemical industry, and it seems like, based on what you're saying, your duties kind of centered around QA QC a lot. Is that accurate, or is that kind of?
A lot of compliance issues. I work in the engineering and maintenance department, but the projects that I centered around were all addressing compliance issues. Like recently, our facility ended up having a FDA warning letter. So the projects for the past year and a half have all been centered around meeting those regulatory requirements.
Yeah, I gotta love those FDA inspectors. Yeah, my wife, like I said, she's an environmental engineer. But before we moved to Morgantown, we were in North Carolina in Raleigh, and she actually taught biopharmaceutical engineering.
Okay.
So she was at the it was a biomanufacturing training and education center at NC State. So, I mean, you and her would probably be able to talk all day long about that stuff. And I would be sitting in a corner drooling because I have no idea about that stuff. I mean, she could tell you about bioreactors and, you know, all that science stuff. And I'm just like, it's a giant shiny bucket, you know, but yeah,
Hey,
I mean,
I love it. I love being in an industrial setting, man. I love being around big pieces of equipment, industrial stuff. And I haven't been around that. Pharmaceuticals more small scale, more molecular size. And I like being around stuff can blow up.
Yeah. But Joseph, because Mylan, you know, unfortunately is closing its doors, at least their campus here in Morgantown, I think it's Blue Rock Manufacturing is opening up a plant here, or a facility on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
You may want to look at them. They're going to do something with coal and making batteries and stuff like that, and signage, like big giant LED, like jumbotron signage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can send you some information on possibly a lead for you.
Greatly appreciated.
But let me make a note, otherwise I'll forget. Let's see. You know, I'm more than willing to help any of you guys out like this. You know, just let's see, Blue Rock. Yeah, I went over there for a little like show and tell. It was supposed to be a facility like site visit, but the facility was an empty warehouse, and they just showed like the products they make. And they just got the lease to the building and set up some folding tables, and like, this is the stuff we make.
Okay, so they are moving forward with it. I heard last that it was canceled.
As of like 2 months ago, they were doing it.
Okay.
So,
but you know how rumors are.
Yeah, I mean, they had WVU there. There was Marshall University was there. You know, like they were going to look to us to help them out.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. So, I mean, some of the responsibilities that I have for you guys to provide to you guys is I'm going to be prepared for the class. And I'm going to try to establish a climate of trust. Now, we're all adults here. I'm not going to take anything you say personally. If you tell me to go screw myself and, you know, whatever, jump in a swamp, so be it. I've heard worse from 18-year-old students, you know, because they don't seem to have a filter installed yet. And I'd love to install a filter in them, but that would be illegal. But, you know, that's unfortunate. But, you know, I'll trust you. You guys trust me. We'll work it out. So I'm going to try to anchor this information against your background and my background and the expertise that I've developed over the years, and try to be a resource for you guys. I don't like just talking at a screen. So that, you know, like having that dialogue back and forth. Now I understand there might be sometimes I'm just talking for 20, 30 minutes and there's no questions. I get that. But if you do have a question, ask. If you want to use the chat box to ask your question, go for it. Yeah. I'm available. If you guys, yes.
Oh, I was just going to tell you, I didn't think it's going to be, I didn't realize you're going to gear the class towards our careers. But I'm not in the finance industry. I'm in the financial software industry.
Oh, financial software. Okay.
Yeah. So sorry about that.
Well,
I didn't add software to our company name.
Okay, that's fine. So financial software. So that actually allows me to talk about Agile a little bit later.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, that actually works. So, but My goal is to be a resource for you guys, just like I would try to be a resource for my students, but they generally see me as the enemy. Hopefully, I'm not the enemy to you guys, but so be it if it happens. But that's what I'm going to try to be for you guys. But for you guys, now I ask this of you, but we're all adults. I understand it may not happen. Life happens. If you guys need to miss a class, that's fine. I scheduled this class to take 39 hours. So if you need to miss a class, that's okay. If you only need 35 hours of project management education, according to the Project Management Institute, to submit with your application for the exam. So by scheduling 39, you could technically miss 2 days and still be okay for the 35. So one thing I ask that you guys do is be prepared. So complete the class, the coursework before class. But like I said, life happens. If you can't do it before class, that's fine. Just if it's consistently that you can't do it, it's going to be tough for you to keep up with class. But let me know. Some days we'll get done early. Some days we might not finish everything that I plan to finish. No, and we'll adjust as needed based on how we're progressing. I ask that you guys take parts in our discussions and activities, just like you guys are now. Now, I understand if, let's say, you're at work and you can't turn on your camera, not a problem. I don't need to see what's going on in your office. I don't need to see, if you're somewhere and it's, it's not decent behind you, that's fine. I don't care. That's cool. Follow the rules of common courtesy. I'm going to respect you guys. If you respect me, we're good. And provide feedback to me. I don't know what's going right or wrong unless you guys tell me. Right? Okay, so I'm going to be looking at the cameras that are on and kind of looking at you guys nodding your head or smiling or, frowning or whatnot. And that's going to tell me if I'm on the right track or not. So hopefully I can gauge off your body language if we're doing okay. So, all right. Cool. All right. Thanks, Sarah. Okay. So I also have a printout next to me where I scribbled some notes. So if you hear the pages flipping, that's all. That's what it is. So this course has a lot of components to it. So the pre-test you guys have already done. There's quizzes. One of you guys did send me a email on the quizzes. And I will, I forget who sent me that email because I just saw it
That was me. Delete it.
Okay, cool.
Delete it. I found it. Answer
right.
my own question.
I appreciate that. So, so there's the Smart Study tool. So you can take your scores that you received from your pre-test and put them into the Smart Study tool, and it will tell you where to focus your studies. If you look at that, it might kind of give you an estimate on where you need to study. And I need to play with it more to see what else it can do. A lot of these software packages like learning systems have a tool like this that gauges it off of your pre-test. So it helps you, like if you didn't do so well in one specific section, it will say, okay, you need to study more on this section. We recommend you study for this long on this section, that kind of thing. Application worksheet. So when you guys are starting to when you're getting to that point where you want to fill out your application, there's a worksheet to help you figure out if you've met the amount of time that's required. So it says you need 3 years of project management experience that do not overlap. So your projects can't overlap during that time. So that's 36 months. Now, if you have a gap, let's say you took a month of vacation, well, technically can't count that month. So now you have, let's say you need to cover 37 months. So that application worksheet can help you figure out all that stuff out. Of course, you guys have the reading materials. I see, at least on 2 of the cameras, that I saw you guys had it. Derek, do you have the materials also?
Yep, sure do. They came within a day, I think.
All right, excellent, excellent. So the slides, I'm going to be showing the slides on the screen. You guys should have a book of the slides. There is an error on one of the slides, but I'll mention which slide it is when we get to it. It's in like module 5, so it's towards the end of the class. So I'll tell you what that error is when we get there. There's videos also that you can watch on the learning system. Additional resources, flashcards. Those flashcards are going to be valuable. Some people will write their own flashcards and use them. Others like that go to like a flashcard website, type all this stuff in, and use like an electronic flashcard, or download one of those applications and use it on their phone. But these flashcards you can actually print out, just print double-sided, I believe, and just cut them, and you can use them just like, you know, traditional flashcard that we all probably used when we were in middle school, high school. It looks like everybody's about the same age. I don't know about you guys, but I'm about 38. So I'm not asking anybody's ages, but I'm assuming we're all roughly the same age. Maybe, I mean, Sarah looks like she's 25, but you know, you're welcome. So,
35, but thank you.
What, 25? Okay.
Yeah.
See, I know how it works.
See, your wife, she's
still 21. She's still 21. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, her birthday's in like, let's see, 2 weeks, and she's still 21. Now, I tried 18 once with her, and she's like, no, I can't drink yet. I'm like, no, all right, then. So it's 21. There's also a resource center, which will give you links to other additional resources throughout. There's a glossary. So some of the terms are going to be confusing, but the glossary should give you, just like Joseph said, like the layman's explanation of what some of these terms mean. Some of them, I hate to say it, and it bothers me too, that some of these are written by academics for academics. I don't consider myself an academic. I came from industry, and I'm working as a professor in the university because my wife got a job at the university, and I applied for a job, and I got hired as a professor. So I don't consider myself an academic. So that's why my title is a professor of practice, not a assistant professor or anything like that. So yeah, but yeah, some of the definitions that I have to tell my students, I'm like, they'll see a full slide of a definition. I'm like, just remember these keywords. You know, it's like this, and this. I teach global supply chain management. That's what I do at the university. So having them learn about what the definition of supply chain is, it's horrible for them because it can fill an entire slide. And I just tell them it's taking raw goods and moving it through all the way to the end user. That's the supply chain. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they're like, oh, we don't need supply chain. Well, you must have take your clothes back to the store. You must have take your iPhone, take that back to the store. And they're like, no, I can't give up my iPhone. Yeah. They don't think of that. But hopefully by the end of the class, they understand. So the learning system is structured into 5 modules. So the exam, it has 3 domains. So we got domain 1, 2, and 3, and each domain is a different amount of the exam. So domain 3 is what's in module 1, which is only going to cover 8% of the exam. So module 2 is going to cover covering domain 1, which is 42% of the exam. So that's half the exam right there. But the last 3 modules, 3, 4, and 5, this is the actual meat and potatoes of project management in 3, 4, and 5 is domain 2, which is half of the exam. So we're not getting into the heavy stuff yet. We'll ease you guys in slowly. All right, so that's it for the course introduction slides. How do you guys want to do breaks? I mean, do you want to go like an hour and then take a break, or how do you guys want to do it? So I have not started recording yet. That was just the kind of the overview slide. I'll start recording when I bring up the next set of slides, Joseph. I saw you put that in the chat.
I asked that just in case if I have to miss a class. I've got 2 young kids. I mean, I plan on being here every time, but I know that we are going to go on vacation. So if I can't make it that 1 week, I just wanted to go back and go watch. That's why I was asking.
And actually, I just noticed that I guess I have the option turned on where the session is recorded by default. So the whole time it's been recorded. So I'm glad I turned on that option. I guess I left it on from teaching during the semester. So this whole session has been recorded so far. So I can send you guys the links out for the recordings. That's not a problem.
Nice.
So how do you guys want to do breaks? On the hours? Do I get 10-minute break, 5-minute break?
On the hour's good.
Okay. All right.
Power through it. I'm okay with shorter breaks. We finish early, but
Yeah.
I mean, with a small group, I'm flexible. Some people need a little bit of time to decompress. Other people need shorter time. Whatever it takes. I'm up for anything. All right. So module 1. This is where we get into that 8% of the game. All right. So the business environment, because most project management you see in some type of business environment. So chapter 1 under module 1, project management concepts. So of course we have to talk a little bit about the timeline of project management. Where did we come from to get to where we are today? Well, it kind of first started back under the ICBM program, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Program, and system integrators. So about 1946. And then we moved on to the 1950s. This is when we became starting to use formal documentation and phase reviews. So we would get to a certain point and then we'd redo a review. Then we'd use CPM. So CPM is the critical path method. So I'm going to pause when I hit this because I'm not sure if you guys are writing or if you're going to maybe just listen and then go back to the recording. So, and then PERT, P-E-R-T. So this is a Navy, the Navy started this, and this is a program evaluation and review technique. So that started in roughly the 1950s. And during this time, we also actually started seeing the role of project managers start, like actually become an actual title. And we kind of first started seeing computers. And then about the 1990s, 2001, we started seeing agile. So software programming is where agile really becomes a thing. So we see agile frameworks, and we have the manifesto, agile manifestos. So agile manifestos are a set of value statements, and I have to read this, otherwise I'll get it wrong. A set of value statements that helped unite various agile methodologies. So it kind of brought all the agile methods together. So that's what the manifesto is. And then we have the PMBOK 6th edition, which is what our material is based on. It came out in 2017. And it's pronounced PMBOK. You know, acronyms have to have a word associated with them, right? It doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can say an entire sentence and not actually say a proper word because of all the acronyms. And honestly, we could actually throw another box up there of 2021. The PMBOK 7th edition has been written and it's going to be published in August. So the actual book will be published in August. It won't be tested until I think January is when the test actually comes out for the 7th edition. So the material you're learning about now, as long as you test before January, I believe, will be valid. If you test after January, you might have to refresh some of the knowledge to the 7th edition of the PMBOK. All right. But from what I've been hearing, there's not much difference between the 6th and 7th edition. But there's still a difference, if that makes any sense. Okay. All right, let's see here. I covered everything. Any questions? Kind of a brief history, where we've been, where we've gone, you know, where we are today. All right. Okay, so characteristics of the profession. So we have a body of specialized and essential knowledge. So that's where this the project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK, comes from. I actually loaned my book to one of my colleagues and he did not return it to me. Otherwise, I would actually show you a copy of what the book looks like. But if you guys really want to see what the book looks like, you can go on to the pmi.org website and go to the store there and you can see it. I believe that costs about $100 to get the book if you want it. If you're a member of the Project Management Institute, you can download it in a PDF for free. So not saying you need to join PMI, but you know, it's up to you if you want to. You can join without a certification. You do not need to be a member to get a certification. But there is, I think, a discount in getting the certification or paying for the exam if you're a member. So up to you guys.
Hey, Jeremy, silly question.
Yeah.
The PMBOK guide, is that, well, the information we're going over right now, is that basically just a quick notes, a summary of the PMBOK guide?
The PMBOK guide is about 800 pages. So this is
Good bathroom reading material, huh?
yeah, that if you're constipated and you have a lot of time on your hands,
Okay.
it could be. But
I was curious whether it's worth buying it or not.
It could be, but let's.
Okay, you can leave it at that.
I'm just trying to think if it would be worth spending $100 on it, or if it would be worth getting a membership and then getting it for free. You know, I mean, if the book's $100, but you can get a membership, which I think is, I mean, the membership might be, let's say, $120, $150, but then you get a free $100 book. You know, spending a little extra to get the membership, and then maybe getting a $100 discount on the certification.
I'm just curious. I ended up getting the membership, so I have the
okay.
download for the PMBOK guide, but it just I don't know. I'm kind of old school. I think I'm probably an old man here in this entire group, so I like actually reading a book instead of seeing it online.
I actually printed out the the book, the digital version, and it was not worth printing out, because I loaned my book and I needed some pages printed out, and accidentally sent it to the printer and didn't actually hit the correct, print only these pages. And when I went to the printer, I had 800 pages, printed the whole book on accident. So, but if your download, if you've noticed, also includes the Agile Practice Guide in the back. So actually you get 2 books in that download. So that's one bonus. You can also buy it with the Agile Practice Guide in the back. So you can get a hard book. But for the test, you really don't need anything more than what you received in your, the package that you got for this course. You really don't, in my opinion. Looking at the materials myself, you really don't. So there's some common standard in the vocabulary. So the lexicon of project management terms. I believe I can download this and send this out to you guys. I don't think there's a copyright that I'll be violating if I send this out to you guys. So let me make a note of that. That way you guys can, if you come across something that you don't understand, and you can look it up in this lexicon and possibly be like, oh, that's what it means. And maybe you just never heard that term used, but you know what it is. You just might not have heard it said in that way. So, and another thing is here, this project management professional certification, all it is just a verification of your knowledge. That's all certification is. That's all any certification is. That you've met the certification requirements in a testing method. Doesn't mean anything more than that. Doesn't mean that you're going to actually perform well in, the world. Hopefully you guys do, but just like there's that joke, you can be the #1 doctor in your class or the last doctor in your class. You're still called a doctor, and usually they're referencing a medical doctor. But just because your position is, you still get that title or that certification or licensure. So it's about how you maintain your certification. Do you do the continuing education? Do you do the professional development to maintain your skills? And there is a requirement to maintain your certification. So let's see here. All right. So the PMP guide, so the book of knowledge here, or body of knowledge. So it's just it's a collection of the widely recognized good practices. So that way it can be applied anywhere in the world, because Project Management Institute is not just, the United States. It's in China, it's in Japan, it's in Germany, it's in Africa. I drew a blank on a country name in Africa. Kenya. It's in Egypt. It's in Russia. It's in Australia. It's all around the world, and these good practices can be applied in any country. Because our goal is to add value to the project. So, and you can apply most of these to your projects most of the time. So it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. It's sometimes you can apply them to your projects, sometimes you can't. So just like in your jobs, you probably see like something that you can do, like one tool doesn't fit all if you're trying to fix something. One regulation doesn't fit all. A screwdriver can't fix anything, but duct tape can. I'm trying to think of a software thing. Go to home in a software command, or go to 10, I'm thinking basic, doesn't always work. You know, stuff like this, you have to have the knowledge, and that's why there's that experience requirement to be able to apply this stuff. And leading the right projects, or lead to the right projects getting done. There's sometimes where, as a project management or manager, you're going to say, this is not the project we should be doing. And we'll have some ways to evaluate projects to see which one we should do and which one we should not be doing. And we'll have some math formulas. Hopefully that won't bother any of you guys, because I don't like doing the math formulas, but they're there. But there might be a better project that has a better return, let's say return on investment, than another one. You know, maybe the customer really wants this one, but there's actually a better one that's going to have a better user response from the actual users, but the customer wants something different. You know, do you do the one that the customer wants, or the one that the users wants? Well, it could come down to who's paying you, right? So that's why sometimes listening to your stakeholders and discussing the issues with them really helps. The stakeholders are anybody that has a dog in the fight, let's say, on your project. And then using these, we can increase or enhance the likelihood of the success of our project. Have you guys had projects that failed? Ever seen a project that failed? I'm sure you guys have.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen a project that you saw was failing, but they kept throwing money at it anyway because they didn't want it to fail?
Yeah.
Yeah. It should have failed. They should have just said, we're done. You know, we should just maybe do some lessons learned and moved on. But no, they kept throwing money at it. So unfortunately, that's what happens in business a lot. They don't want to accept the loss. They just want a win, so they keep throwing money at it, when they could have maybe been said, we'll take the loss and have evaluate that, and then we can throw the money back at the problem, but be more efficient and get a bigger win, because now we know what we're doing. So hopefully with the knowledge in this, and I actually encourage you guys to get the PMP guide, whether it's electronic or hard copy, at some point. I mean, you don't need to do it now. At some point, because as your project manager, you're going to flip back to that book to see, well, what does this thing say? I do it. And I know lots of people that are project managers that will flip back to the book and say, oh, you know, I haven't done this in a while. What does the book recommend? And that's all. That's all the book can do, is say, this is the good practice. And well, does that work in this situation? And we can move forward from that. So there's a couple practice guides that PMI has. There's the Agile Practice Guide, which is used mostly in software development. So you get to learn about Agile techniques and tools. If you've heard of Scrum techniques, that's a big one that uses Agile techniques, although they've kind of made it their own, and they don't call it Agile, they call it other things. But it's essentially Agile. But Agile can be used for non-software software projects. It's just, Agile is where you go in really fast with like a strike team. You get in there, you analyze a problem, you fix the problem, and then you evaluate your results. And this all happens really fast. And then you move on. You're on to something else. Where a traditional project might take months, an Agile project might take a week. So it's depends on the mindset. That's why people, when they're getting into Agile, they have to understand that things happen faster. And a lot of people don't understand that. So when you're looking for a position and you're a project manager and you haven't done software before, software project management, it's very hard to get into software project management if you've never done it before, because of that. So, and then Agile also tailoring a framework or tool. We do that in Agile to make it, we change it to fit our purposes for that instance, because we can in Agile. So, so managing change in organizations, PMI, all strategic change delivered in programs and projects. That's how PMI sees change in organizations. And there's change management methodologies. It's not somebody just goes in there and makes a decree, you know, like a royal decree or an executive action. There's a process to it, a method, you know, to get people on board. You know, there's paperwork that needs to happen, especially if it's a project. You know, who approved the change? Did they approve it with funding? Did they approve it with a change in due dates? You know, how did it happen? But if there's a change, it increases the chances that the project will have enduring value to the organization, because they're looking at what it is and what it can be. So they make that change that's needed. So, you guys good? All right. All right. So benefits of certification, other than having a nice little certificate. I can show you guys my certificate if you guys want. Just a little fancy little thing that has my name on it. It says I've got a project management professional certification. And I'm listed on their website if you want to look it up with, like a register number. But yeah. Personally, it enhances your professional reputation, you know, because you've met a difficult certification. It's not easy. Don't let anybody think that it's easy to get the certification. But then again, it's not overly difficult. There's almost 2 million people with this certification worldwide. Now, when you think about that, 2 million out of what, 7-8 billion people? But not everybody's a project manager. So it's really, it's almost a point of pride, because not everybody who does project management will go for their certification. I mean, if you guys think of it, you've gotten this far without having project management professional certification, but you guys want to take it that extra step and get the knowledge, have that knowledge verified with the certification, and expand your marketability globally and across industries. Because a project manager, that knowledge can be applied, you know, whether you're in oil and gas or pharmaceuticals, or you go somewhere else. You can go nonprofit, you can go retail, you can go anywhere. You can go education. You can go anywhere you want. That PMP certification or CAPM certification, or any of the higher ones, go with you, because you have the knowledge. So the increased salary potential, you could potentially see an increase of up to 20% on salary. Potentially 20% increase. Now, that's not guaranteed, and you might see more than that. But generally, people see 20% increase having the certification versus not having the certification. So everybody would love 20%, right? The government would love to take an extra, you know, personal income tax percent out of your extra 20%. So they want, the government benefits when you benefit, and the state benefits also, right? Unfortunately, that's how our system works. Government doesn't do anything for you in most cases, and they they get the benefit off of you. But that's government. I'm not anti-government or anything. I'm just, maybe anti-IRS, because I haven't even done my taxes yet. That's something I got to do tomorrow. They're due what, the 17th of May this year? They pushed it back. I just don't want to write a check. I'm probably going to have to write a check to the IRS and probably the state of West Virginia. I just don't want to do that. But anyway, that's on a personal level for me. But hopefully you guys aren't in that position. But I don't want to give the government a tax-free loan either to get it as a tax refund. So anyway, but you also have the obligation, once you have the certification, of keeping your skills and knowledge up to date. And that's done through the use of the professional development units. Basically, there's roughly 3 categories. There's a technical, a professional, and I'm drawing a blank on the last one right now. Where there's 3 categories you have to get basically continuing education hours on. Now, there is a place where you can go and get free professional education by watching webinars. So there's no actual cost of that. You have to get 6 or 60 over 3 years to get recertified. So every 3 years, you have to go through the process of getting recertified. It's not a big deal. The hardest part is getting through the test. After that, it's easy. So on the organizational level, it's going to create efficiencies, because you're going to see projects that need to be done, and you're going to do the projects properly because you have the knowledge on how they should be ran. You're going to reduce the risk of ineffective project management. I'm sure you guys have seen the projects that are ran by, supposedly the person that knows what they're doing. And, or you've been on those teams by someone who supposedly knows what they're doing. And if you guys are the project manager and you're good at it, you're going to attract quality talent to your teams, which will make your company better, right? Because people like to gather around people that are good. Because I have every confidence that you guys are good at your jobs. Kind of threw in a compliment there. Yeah. All right. So people like to be around people that are good at their jobs, or, or just are pleasant people. We don't like to be around people that are bad at their jobs or negative people and stuff like that. That's just kind of a natural thing we have. So by doing that, we're going to attract better people, that quality talent. So we have the dreaded application. Now, the application is tedious. So once you click on starting your application, you'll start a 90-day clock. You have 90 days to complete your application and submit it into PMI. So don't start it yet. If you did, don't worry about it. All it does is it expires and you just start it again. But once you've submitted it and it's approved, you have to take your exam within 1 year of that approval. So to apply, you're going to need, whether you have a bachelor's degree or not, let's assume you have a bachelor's degree, you're going to need 3 years or 36 months of non-overlapping project management experience. This is the hard part. Now, when I did it, it was 4,500 hours of project management experience. I had to justify it down to the hour. So if you don't have a high school diploma, or with a high school diploma, associate's degree, or the global equivalent, that's actually how they say it, a global equivalent, you need 5 years of project management experience. So that's 60 months of non-overlapping experience. You'll pay the fees for them to take in your application. There may be test center fees. And you have to provide proof of 35 hours of project management education, which is why you're here. So you'll get a nice little certificate at the end saying that you've done 35 hours of project management experience. I'm not sure if it's going to come from me or through Scott or Dallas, but I do know I'll probably have my signature on it. So once it'll be towards the end of class. So, but yeah, I'll make sure you guys get that. But they don't mention that I recall. Let's see here. Yeah, there's a possibility your application can be audited. So it's not on the slides. My application was audited. So what happens when you get audited is they will send you paperwork that you need to provide your supervisors that you listed for your experience. Your supervisors sign that paperwork saying that what you provided was true and accurate, and then it gets sent in. I forget if I had to stick it in a separate envelope or if I just had them, or if they had to put it in an envelope and sign the seal. And then I sent it in with all the other ones I had to get. I don't remember if I had to do that, but I had to get my supervisors to do that. Yeah. So that was the auditing process. It took an extra 2 weeks for me to get a approval after the paperwork was sent in, but yeah, as long as you don't put anything that's not accurate, you'll be fine. So.
Is there a limit on the look back or how far back you can go?
Let's see here. Taking a look at their page here. I don't see one actually. It says 4-year degree, 36 months leading projects, 35 hours project management experience.
Okay.
The book
I
says
didn't-
6 years.
6 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The PMP website doesn't say. So I would say the more relevant it is or more recent it is, the better. I would keep it within 5 if the book says 6, just to, keep it, just to not have any problems. But just to, let's see, like I'm looking to apply for the program management professional. And on that one, it says 84 months of program management experience within the last 15 years. So that's basically 7 years out of 15. So that it's, oh no, wait, that's for high school. So yeah, 4 years out of 15, 48 months of program management experience within the last 15 years. That's for the program management professional, which is the next level up from the project management professional. So, yeah. But this one, it's going to be a panel review, and then it's 170 multiple choice question, and then and that one's like a $1,000 test. And that's okay. So Joseph put page 1-11, second paragraph says within the last 8 years.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought it was 6.
So that's something I can make a note, and I can give PMI a call on that. Let's see. Yeah, I can give them a call, and that way I can get a correct answer, because their website doesn't say. The book here is saying 8 years, but might as well get the actual proper answer, because that could make a difference for one of you guys. So, all right. Okay, so what is a project? So now we're actually going to start talking about what projects are and what they are not. A lot of companies will call something a project that is not a project. This is difficult for my students to understand as well. So a project is a temporary endeavor. It has a defined start and a defined end to a project. It is not an ongoing thing. So, for example, if you have something where you are auditing compliance, that is a process that you repeat over and over and over and over, right? On a certain time period. You might do it monthly, you might do it daily, you might do it quarterly, or so on. That's a process. That's an operation, not a project. However, if you're going to put a new bioreactor piece of equipment into Milan, and it's going to be installed, and you're going to have an electrician come in, you're going to have, all this, the high purity water put in, piping put in, and all this other stuff. That's a project because there's a defined beginning and a defined ending point. Building a new building. So in Morgantown, the College of Business and Economics is getting a new building. That would be a project. The building is going where Stansbury Hall was, the old basketball gym where Jerry West was. I don't know who Jerry West was, except he was supposedly a basketball coach, and I don't know. I'm not that much into college sports, but either way, there was a defined start of that building, or start of that project, the construction, where they started tearing down the old building. And there's going to be a defined endpoint when they hand the keys over for the new building. And that's going to be it. It's temporary. So they're supposedly going to hand the keys over in May of 2022. Hopefully. That so far they've been on schedule, but we're talking about government construction, so I'm expecting somewhere in the middle of summer, maybe August next year, because there's always overruns or problems that happen with government construction, at least from my time in the military. But the project always creates a unique product, service, or a result. So it's different in some way it's been done before. So it's not, it's usually my students have this weird idea that, like them making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is a project, because they make it every day for lunch is a project. But if they were to make a machine to make their peanut butter and jelly sandwich, making that machine would be the project. As soon as that machine is done being built and maybe tested, that would be the end of it. Is this making sense to you guys? I don't want to keep going if I'm beating a dead horse.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. All right. Joseph, was that a no? I don't want to keep moving if I'm leaving anybody.
No, you're
behind.
good. No,
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Sarah,
No, project is what you're describing, making a peanut butter jelly sandwich is just nothing but a daily responsibility that has to be taken care of. A project has a start and end and has a unique product, like what you're saying. I got you.
Yeah. So like, so I'm trying to think back to like what you said you do. So, let's see. Like you said, you do some compliance work, quality control, compliance, quality. So you might have to do some inspections every so often, right, Joseph? to make sure things are, let's say, within tolerance,
Yeah.
maybe some safety checks?
Yeah, like my responsibilities are qualifying equipment, making sure they
Okay.
operate as intended.
Okay. So you probably have to do that periodically to maybe to renew a certification on them. Like you certify it saying that it's meeting the standards that are meeting their specifications. And so you do that probably according to the manufacturer's recommended timeframes. Well, that would be an operation. But if there was you were reevaluating that to be maybe to change that might be a project to change those timeframes, because that would be a unique result if you were to set a new schedule, and you're doing some testing and stuff like that. So you can still do the same thing, you just have a different goal, if that makes sense. So it's just a slight maybe wording and goal there change, and it can be a project. So, all right. All right. So projects are always temporary and they vary. Operations are ongoing. They don't have like an ending date. They're indefinite and they're repetitive. But deliverables, projects are unique. They're never the same. Where operations, they're standardized. You're walking around with the same form, checking things off. I remember, I mentioned earlier that I was in the military. I was in the Marine Corps. And I remember going around in a warehouse, going around to every fire extinguisher and putting my initials, making sure that fire extinguisher had a charge, the hose wasn't dry rotted, dusting it off, making sure it could work if it was needed. That was standardized. That was repetitive work. There was nothing unique about that. Now, if our warehouse got, let's say, a halon system or a foam system installed into the warehouse, that would be unique, because then we wouldn't need the fire extinguishers, maybe. But when it comes to human resources, we have teams, but we're usually come together as a team for the duration of the project, and then people go back to their home departments. Where operations, these teams are put together and they stay a team forever. So you have your human resources department, you have your supply department, you have your IT department, you have your legal department. Every other function within your company has their own team. Where your temporary teams in the projects, you might get a person from human resources to be on the team. You might get somebody from the legal department to be on your team. You might get a person from accounting to be on your team because of the needs of that project. So you might have a cross-functional team. So, and then the manager, for projects, it's generally the project manager. But that could change depending on the structure of the company and the project. When we'll get into that later, I believe that'll be under 3, 4, or 5 modules. But for operations, we have a functional manager. We have the accounting manager for the accounting department. So that's the kind of manager that we're used to. So, so we could list off some projects and operations, but I think you guys get this, right? If this was my class of students, I'd ask them, but I'm pretty confident you guys got this, unless you guys want to do it. No? Okay. How about a break? You guys want to take 5 minutes? I just saw it was 7:15, so we've been going for about an hour and change.
Sounds good.
So
I'm fine.
all right. Derek, you want to take a break?
I'm with the group, whatever they want to do.
Okay. All right. So why don't seems like everybody's okay to keep going. Is that right? Or did I misunderstand? Keep going. All right. All right. I'll ask again in about 30 minutes. See how you guys are doing. Because I think we're doing pretty good. At least in my opinion, I think we're definitely going to finish early today. All right. So we have differences between projects. So we have difference. Every project is different because it's unique. So project size and complexity. So building a new government building, such as Reynolds Hall, the new College of Business and Economics building, cost $100 million. That's the new building that my office will be in over a year. It's going to be $100 million building. Well, that's a pretty large project size for the general contractor that's building it. But I'm sure that general contractor has got many other projects going on, smaller and larger, that they're doing. And just because there's that dollar amount associated with it doesn't mean that this project is larger than any other project. A small project, like a small physical size project, could be larger than a $100 million project just because of some complexities or constraints that might be on it. So, I mean, if you guys have been in Morgantown, which I believe all of you guys have said that you've been in Morgantown before, that road that drives next to, Broadhurst, it's a pretty busy road at certain points of the day, and trying to get trucks in and out of that part next to downtown campus is tough. And especially now when they actually got coach buses, because the PRT line they're not operating that because the social distancing the students wouldn't be able to do, so that the university is spending money on coach buses to ferry students between Evansdale and downtown. So the traffic constraints, and trying to prioritize materials because of the small footprint of the parking lot that they have to work with adds complexity. But there's definable goals, but there's high uncertainty based on weather and COVID being thrown into this too. COVID wasn't a thing when the Stansbury Hall was being torn down, but then COVID hit, and now what was that going to do to the construction? Well, luckily it did not affect the schedule at all of that building. The workers were still able to work, and so they didn't suffer anything personally. They were still able to get paid and make a living. They were able to do social distancing themselves by working in different parts of the building from each other, which was great because they were able to make a living, and the building was still able to be built. But there's also some staffing models we can do. Now, maybe the general contractor might have to change how they bring in their subcontractors. Maybe they need to have the brick guy come at different times because of the social distancing. They can't have the glass guys and the brick guys coming at the same time. I don't know. I've never done construction, so I just hire a general contractor and they handle it whenever I needed a general construction done. Like, here's the plans, tell me how much, and that's all my involvement has been in the past. But all these different things come into effect. So no two projects are the same. That's really what this comes down to. And hopefully that kind of makes a point to it. Think about all the things that you guys have done. When, like, maybe personally that you guys have done that you can see as a project. And could you compare that to another thing that you would consider being a project? So, like maybe planning a wedding. Hopefully that was a project, something you don't repeat over and over and over again. They're too expensive. Hopefully, the wedding, had a defined starting and a defined ending point. But yeah, if you're married, I don't want to make that assumption. But, yeah. So anyway, but then of course, then you have the operation of kids. Like Joseph said, he's got kids. I have a 1-year-old and 1 year and 2 week old kid. Yeah, so much fun. Yeah. All right. So why are projects undertaken? Well, there's several factors to that. So market demands. The customer is driving the market, and the business is trying to meet that customer demand. But then there's also strategic opportunities. So the business has identified something that they want to go after. So there's that business need. Or there's social needs. Sometimes the business might be like, okay, we're going to try to reduce our carbon footprint, let's say, as an example. Or we're going to try this, the hottest new environmental thing or social thing that's going on. I'm not saying any one is more important than the other, but something might be happening. Environmental considerations. Maybe there's a new regulation that came out, added to the Clean Air and Water Act. So now there's a compliance thing that needs to be done. So now you have to bring in some type of equipment, or you got to change a process, and that's, or you have to do something a different way with a byproduct of your process. Maybe something's got to happen. If you're in a manufacturing environment, maybe there's a customer request. They want something done differently, but that needs a project to make it to accommodate that customer's request, because it's not something you guys normally do. Or a technology advancement. This one's becoming more and more prevalent as technology is just advancing so far. I tell my students about enterprise resource planning systems, ERP systems, so like SAP, Oracle, these kind of systems. They're just becoming so dominant out there with large companies. So it's a project to get these systems online within a company. Now, yes, usually IT leads these systems, but sometimes it's not just IT. Sometimes it's somebody else that leads it. But you have so many people involved. But then, of course, our favorite one, legal requirements. The lawyers get themselves involved in all sorts of things, especially in Congress. The majority of them are lawyers, right? But some of the rules and regulations that are come out, are for the better. I'll give them that. But some of them are really crazy. But these legal requirements, because of the penalties, if for non-compliance, we choose to comply because of the possible penalties for non-compliance. Might be a fine, might be the bad publicity for non-compliance, might be the additional court costs, could be loss of something very valuable to the company for non-compliance. All these things that a company looks at, other than just dollars. A lot of companies think that, or a lot of people think that companies just look at dollars and cents. No, a lot of companies will look at, well, we better comply with this, because if we don't, we're going to get hit with fines. We're going to be taken to court. We're going to get the negative publicity. We're going to lose sales. If we lose sales, we won't have enough money to pay our people. That means we're going to have to reduce our staff. And we don't want to reduce our staff. So that's the real reason they might want to do these, projects for legal requirements, because they want to keep their people. So not every company, but some do. All right. All right. So chapter 2. I know I said I'd wait till about 7:45, but want to take a 5-minute break? Maybe a little longer? 5-7 minutes? Yeah. Okay. Joseph says, let's take a break. Sure. All right.
Please.
All right. Let's do it. All right. I'm just going to leave it open right here. And yeah, let's do it. So take about 5 minutes. I'm not going to put a timer up or anything. Just come back when you're done. All right. Everybody's back. Cool. So I would play music right before class started to kind of entertain the students. Now it's one of them. I would usually play foreign language music, so that way I wouldn't get into, oh, this person's better than this person and artists and stuff like that. So I would play like, let's see, what's some of them? Like Indian, South African, like Indian, South African, Chinese, Korean. I would play those languages. So the students had no idea what was being sung about, but and they actually would, like start dancing with their camera on. So it was pretty interesting. But anyway, let's see, where'd my PowerPoint go? There it is. Okay. I don't expect any of you guys to start dancing unless you want to. All right. Okay. Here's my chat box. Journey, Tesla, Foreigner. Okay. Yeah. I might just start playing some of the songs before Tesla and Foreigner. I've heard Journey, Tesla and Foreigner. I'm not familiar with. I'll have to listen to a couple of those. All right. Okay, now I can hear myself. Okay. So chapter 2 of module 1. So project life cycles, phases, and process groups. So when I took the exam, I had to learn all 47 process groups. You guys don't have to. But you guys might have to remember some general things about them. And you guys will have them in your books with the knowledge you'll need. I actually had to learn what processes were under what groups and so on and so forth. That was a nightmare for me. But the PMI gods are starting to shine down favorably upon us, and they're starting to realize that kind of knowledge regurgitation is not worth it. So they're starting to make it a little bit better for us. So it's about knowing where and how and what, rather than just being able to just regurgitate the information. But with that being said, so we have this iterative or repeating processes within projects. So we have that progressive elaboration. Basically, we keep doing it over and over and over till we get to what we want. So this could be prototyping. Well, we make a prototype, figure out what we want to make better, make another prototype with those changes, figure out what we want to change, make another prototype, and go and keep going until we get till we get to that point where the prototype is exactly what we want. Then we go to production. And this, we could do this in all sorts of things. Like for example, how did we get to the point where 87 octane or 89 octane or 93 octane was the level of octane that we should have in automobiles? Well, we probably had to test that so much. Or how did we learn that we needed these type of cleaning additives added to the fuel? Well, somebody in the oil and gas industry figured all this out. And then they started marketing the heck out of it. Now people will only go to certain gas stations because of it. But when we do this iterative process where we just repeat this process over and over, we're increasing that level of detail, that level of accuracy. So I knew some people when I was in the military, they were calibration specialists. So they would calibrate radio equipment. So when, for example, if a radio needs to calibrate to a certain frequency, they were the ones that would actually adjust the electronics on the circuit board so that radio could actually get to that frequency, not be off by a certain amount, the exact frequency. And if they couldn't do it, they send it over to somebody else who could do the microscopic soldering or micro soldering to fix that kind of thing on the circuit board. And then they would take it back and calibrate it. Now, all these kind of things were, or this progressive elaboration, they would do this kind of repair and then they'd certify it. And I think that might be something, maybe Joseph, that could be kind of relatable to what you do, where you're certifying it, if it meets the standard, just like the calibration guys when I was in the military did. But but they got to the point sometimes they're like, this cannot be calibrated. So they had to figure out, what are we going to do? Most of the time they were able to salvage it, but there was times where they just said, there's no hope. We need to order a new circuit board or whatnot. But this process is a tool that we use, and it's not just used in project management. This is a thing that we use in planning documents. If you're planning an event, you might write out, okay, we're going to have the guest speaker talk, then we're going to have somebody else talk, then we're going to have this person talk, and then you say, okay, then when this is what's going to be served for dinner, and then all this kind of stuff, and okay, these are the events that are going to go on the next day, and then this is what we're going to have as a dinner, and or no, this is just going to be a cocktail dinner kind of thing. But then somebody comes in and says, oh no, we're going to do this, or no, our budget just got cut in half, so now you're like, oh well, where are we going to cut the budget? Okay, well, the first night's going to be a networking with drinks only, no meal. No. So it's a process that we go through until we get to that final product. And so when we get to the project management plan, we're doing this over and over and over again. We're continuously making it better. So just like we have a stick drawing of a bicycle, then we have another bicycle, and then we have a final product of a bicycle in front of a brick wall in our pictures here. Well, what might be the next bicycle here? And then what might be the next one after that? Who knows? No. But we're constantly trying to make things better and add detail and more accuracy. So that's progressive elaboration. But we also have life cycles. So at the beginning of a project, there's a huge amount of risk and uncertainty. You don't know if that project is going to be successful, and you don't know if it's even going to get the project done. So the staffing cost is the highest right at the beginning, because you're trying to build the team, but you don't have anything to show for it yet. But as we get further into that executing, monitoring, controlling, so that's 3 of the 5 phases. We have planning and initiating at the beginning. Where our costs are starting to skyrocket because we're adding more people, so they're getting higher. And as we progress over time, the risk and uncertainty start to decrease. So, because we're already starting to produce something, or going in the right direction. And as we're going along, the cost of making a change increases because we've already done so much work. So we might have to back up and change work in order to accommodate whatever this change request was. We might have to redo stuff. We might have to stop and change direction with what we were doing. So it might be expensive to do that. Does this make sense for you guys so far? Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. All right. So, actually, I should say that the monitoring or Monitoring and controlling is actually one phase. So executing is a phase, and monitoring and controlling is a phase. And then we have closing at the end. So executing, and so it's initiating or planning and initiating, executing, monitoring and controlling, and then closing is the phases.
Say that again.
Okay, so we have initiating, planning, executing, and then these two go together, monitoring and controlling. Those two phases are, or those two words are together. And then we have closing. Those are the phases.
Okay.
So so the, just to kind of draw it on this chart here. Initiating would be the planning would be like somewhere over here. Okay. Initiating would be like right here. This is where we start the project. Actually, I'm going to have to double check that. I always get those two mixed up, but we have the executing. So we started the project, but we also have managing and controlling that happen at the same time. So we're managing that execution, but we're also controlling it. Controlling is just making sure it's going in the right direction. We're basically doing quality control on the execution. And then at the closing, that's when we shut everything down. We do our after action reports. We do, our final reports that get filed away. So the next project manager, if they want to see what we did, they could go back and look at these reports and see, oh, well, this worked, but this didn't work, that kind of stuff. Does that help? Okay, cool. All right. So 4 life cycles are identified in the PMBOK guide. So we have predictive, iterative, incremental, and agile. And we also have this roll wave planning. All these types can manage uncertainty by planning near term in detail, while future work is planned in a more general manner. And we all do this. We know what we're probably going to do tomorrow, right? But we have a general idea of what we might be doing next week, right? So when we left work today, we might probably already had a plan for what we're doing tomorrow. But next week, we just have a ballpark idea of what we're doing. To kind of bring this to a personal level, right? Make sense? Cool. Because I know when I leave the office, when I'm in the office, I usually put a stack of paper right on my keyboard, and that way I actually have to move the stack of papers to even get at my desk or my keyboard. So I have to look at them first. And that's just what I do. So I actually touch them and I have to deal with them first. So predictive versus agile. So these are almost opposite of each other, almost. So I got some acid reflux going on. So that's what all this coughing is about. But so predictive, you essentially know your requirements early in the project. You might know them before your project even starts. Very rarely do you start the project without having a general idea. You have a detailed plan early on, and then you follow with that execution. The activities are all done at once. Or actually, I should say done once. So you only do it once. Where agile, you're repeating your activities over and over and over until you get them done correctly. Where predictive, you have your deliverable given one time. There's one deliverable. That building is only given to your customer once. Agile, there's small deliveries where you might have your customer coming to that building, taking a look at, okay, we're done with this floor. What do you think of it? Okay, that was the ground floor. Come back next week, take a look at the first floor or the second floor. come back the week after, you'll see the next floor. That might be an example of agile with a building, which is not very good use of agile. Predictive also uses milestones for stakeholder involvement. So the stakeholder wants to be kept in the loop, but they don't need to know every detail as it's happening. So, and overall, the goal is to manage cost. Where on agile side, the stakeholders are involved. They're continuously involved to give the feedback. So that's why it's generally used with software, because you don't want your programmers going down a rabbit trail when they should be over on the interstate. So by having your customer or the stakeholders involved, you're going to get the right product and you're going to give the customer exactly what they want. Where the predictive, the milestones are really the only time that your stakeholder is going to say, oh, this is what I was expecting, but you gave me this. So agile, the requirements change pretty quickly. You might be starting off thinking, oh, well, we're just going to change the website, the colors of the website. But next thing you know, you're developing a brand new website that's, interactive, that has all these, video motion and all this stuff going on. And all you went in there was to change the colors. That was the original plan, but now you're doing all this different stuff. Agile, they'll start with a couple details, but more detail will be added on later. Some people say agile is, doing an agile project is you're doing it for the customers who don't really know what they want when you start, but they get an idea of what they want as you're going on with it. So they see what you're producing and they're like, I don't want that. I want this. Or no, I don't want that, but let's go with this direction. It's kind of, that's what some people say agile is like. That's why you keep doing it over and over and over until you have that deliverable. So.
Do you think it's harder to stay in scope with agile than it is for predictive?
I actually think with predictive, it's harder. Agile, because of how short it is, the intention is to be short. It's, the time frame on agile is much easier to stay within scope. Yes, you do have scope creep where your scope might get a little bit bigger, but with the predictive, you can go way off the rails because of a chain with change orders. And when you meet with a stakeholder, they'll be like, oh, that's not what I wanted at all. And now you're 75% into the project. And that's like the third milestone, because the stakeholder or the customer finally started paying attention to what you were, talking about. When the first one, they weren't really paying attention. So I really think predictive is the ones where they can go off the rails or, out of scope, or sometimes what's called gold plating, where you're starting to do extra work to please your customer that they didn't ask for. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So gold plating, an example of gold plating, if let's say a building, if it's a building and one side gets a lot of sun, and the customer didn't ask for windows to be tinted on that side of the building, and it's not in the statement of work to have that side of the building windows tinted. Gold plating would be tinting those windows. It's something the customer did not ask for, but you went ahead and did it anyway. And this is where companies that are, can get into, I don't want to say financial trouble, but they can get into unpaid work by doing these things and then trying to bill later for it, because it wasn't part of the work, it wasn't asked for, but they did it anyway. So It's unfortunate, but some companies will do that, but then other companies will actually follow the statement of work to the letter, and the customer actually kind of expected you to do a little extra that was beyond that scope of work. So it kind of goes both ways. That's why it's very important to understand the scope, like where your limits are, what the project is covering and what it's not covering, and and the constraints and the limits and all that kind of stuff when you're starting a project. And any changes, understand the limits of the changes, what's exactly is being asked for in the changes. Because if you don't and you do something wrong, well, it might come back on you because you didn't understand the change. So, all right.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
Hey, I struggle with that predictive and that agile.
Sure.
Because that's a hard time where I agree with that. Predictive, as long as you have a very well-defined set of initial requirements, then you can have a very successful, cost-effective project.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing I see with predictive. But when it comes to agile, you have low detail early on, and you continually develop as the customer wants. To me, that's like a consultant's dream, because people are in the business of making money. And
Yes.
so if I can continue leading on my customer as much as possible, then I'll continue to get a paycheck, and I'll have great rewards. But predictive, it's measurable, it's value added, and it's you have a start and end date. But agile doesn't seem like you have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the agile is meant to be short term. I mean, it could be as short as a couple days. It could be a week. It could be a month.
Okay.
Where predictive, it could be, I mean, it can be as short as a week, but it could be years in length. So agile, I kind of see it as a free for all. We want to do a project and we don't really know exactly what we want, but we have an idea. That's kind of how I see agile.
Oh, okay. So not necessarily the project, but it's more for development.
Agile is primarily used for software development. So, like for example, if you have software on your computer, you might get frequent updates. Like for example, Microsoft Windows, if they're going to send an update, it usually comes out on a Tuesday, and it's a small update. And every once in a while, they'll push out a big update. But these little updates are to handle the little things, where the big updates might be, okay, this is a major feature update that we're doing. But like in the news lately, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but Microsoft is talking about changing the font that Windows uses, the default font. Why that's news, I don't know, but they're talking about changing the default font to something else. I don't care, but that's what they're doing. To me, that would be kind of an agile thing to create the software patch that our computers would download and make the change. But it would be a predictive thing to add a major update to Windows, like going from Windows 8 to 10. That would be a predictive thing.
All right.
So, but going from Windows 8 to 10, that also could be agile, but like for within a predictive. So I know this is, I hope it's not twisting your mind into knots, but you can have little short spurts of a project within a project, like trying to get little chunks done. Like we'll talk about what's a work breakdown structure, and you have these tasks, the tasks that were of work, little chunks of work that we'll do. And we can do agile on the tasks as needed. That way we can kind of like focus on that, get it done, and move on. But for the purposes of the exam, they're separate. So I hope I'm not twisting anybody's brain into a knot. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so these two, iterative versus incremental, are pretty similar. You can have dynamic requirements, meaning the requirements change, and they're iterative is very similar to agile, where the activities are repeated until they're done correctly. But it's similar to the predictive, where there's just one delivery. There's one time delivered to the customer. We're incremental. We're taking little steps. We're doing little deliveries. So, and so the activities are only performed once for a given increment. So, like, we're doing a small piece at a time and giving it to our customer. So sometimes the customer doesn't want the whole thing done at once. They just want a little piece and then given to you, or given to them, I should say. The next piece given to them. So the iterative, the goal is correctness of the solution. They're going for correctness. Where the incremental, their goal is speed, because you're giving them little chunks as the chunks are done. So they're getting it, it's being delivered to the customer as it finishes. So we're good? All right. So we have a continuum of project life cycles. So we have risk at the bottom, stakeholders, change, delivery, and requirements up all the way at the top. So we go, there's one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. It should be in your book. Well, I mean, it's on your slide book. So you can read this at the end. I don't want to read every square because that would be just silly. You guys can read for yourself. But you can see how at one end we have predictive and agile at the other. And then the two ends of the spectrum, change. For example, change is constrained as much as possible. Predictive does not like change. A project manager on a predictive project will almost fight you to not change anything about the project. Where at the other end, agile, they will deal with change in real time. So they're like, oh, you have a change order? All right, let's start working on it. Where predictive, it's like, you got a change order? Well, it's got to go through the proper process. They're basically telling you, take that somewhere else. Especially if there's a project management office, which we'll get into later. But in the middle, change is incorporated at periodic intervals. So it might be once a week, once a month, where the changes are incorporated into the project. So I'll let you guys look at this on your own instead of going over it, the whole thing. But it's interesting to see the spectrum, from left to right. It's not as interesting as the political spectrum that we got here in the United States, but it's interesting to see how things go. Yeah. I'll do that with my students too. I'll make jokes about politics. I won't talk about politics, but I'll kind of poke fun at just the political situation. And you would think I just like lit one of them on fire, but I'm like, I didn't say one side was better than the other. I have my personal opinions, but I didn't say anything. And they're like, oh, well, why did you say so-and-so was bad? Check the recording. I didn't say that. But yeah. All right. So predictive life cycle they move from one phase to the next phase. So they start with project scope, time, cost are determined early in the life cycle. It's all preordained, predefined. And this process is easily, best for projects that are easily defined, well understood deliverables. You know exactly what needs to be delivered, and essentially you don't need to guess at anything. So you just move from analyze to design to build to test to deliver. And these are just example phases. If you have the Agile Practice Guide, this would be on page 21 of the Agile Practice Guide, figure 3-2. So, and they do have permission from the Project Management Institute. Not that anybody cares. Yeah. There's one thing about working for a university, there's something called academic free use. Yeah. It's like plagiarism with permission or something. But anyway, so we have iterative and incremental life cycles. So most of your projects you're going to see within these two scopes. Unless you're purely in the software realm, then you'll probably see incremental and agile. But most projects are in these right here. So iterative life cycle, series of repeating cycles. Repeated cycles is the key element. The scope is set early. Somebody is going to hand you a project charter, and it's going to say, this is your boundaries for your project. This is your budget. This is your schedule. Or, this is the estimated start time, and you're going to have 3 months to do this. You're going to get most of this stuff predefined for you. Sometimes you might have to do it, but most of the time it's going to be already established for you. If you have a program manager or a portfolio manager, they might just go ahead and give you this information, and you just get handed the project charter and you're told to go. But these increments are not distinct. So the single deliverable refinements. So sometimes you'll have to give the product to your customer, and then they'll come back to you and say, okay, change this, 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 and this. And then you will then make that another iteration. So like prototyping. All right. Incremental life cycle. So increments are the key elements. You're eliciting feedback. You want the feedback from the stakeholder, the customer, whoever it is. And you're going to fast track other projects and phases to get that done. And sometimes, depending on what the change is or whatever, you're going to release it to operations because it's no longer a project. You're going to release it off to operations, and then they'll do the repetitive stuff that's no longer unique. So, and the deliverable is done only after that final iteration. So in this one, you might be only taking it 95% of the way before you hand it off and closing the project. Because you're releasing it to operations. All right. Okay. Let's see. I better keep up, otherwise got to make sure I'm not going to go further than I should today. All right, agile. So when should you use it? Well, agile is, I don't want to say a new thing, but it's relatively unknown unless people have done it before or been exposed to it. a lot of people just don't have experience with this. So Agile should be used if the project is going to evolve over the life of the project. So when more information becomes available, the project changes. So for example, if you are building a house and all you know when you start is you want a house that has a garage, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a large kitchen with an island. If that's what you start with, or you tell an architect, let's say you start at that level, well, the architect might draw a square or a rectangle, I should say, put a garage, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen with an island. Well, you didn't ask for a family room. You didn't ask for a dining room. You didn't ask for any of that yet. So, but once you realize, okay, now you want a family room, now you want a dining room, now you want a deck off the back, now more information is available. So now the project is going to adapt to that because it started off uncertain. You wanted a house blueprints, but now because of more information from you as a customer or stakeholder, now that project can evolve. So the project needs to be flexible. So hopefully your architect in this situation is flexible and can adapt and is responsive to you. Because there's going to be a high degree of changes and uncertainty. All they know is you wanted a house designed. They might show you some blueprints of what they've designed in the past and for you to get ideas. So they kind of have an idea of what direction you're going, but they still have no idea what the final blueprint's going to look like. Same thing with software. You might have an idea of what the software is going to do, but you don't know how it's going to do it yet. And especially with software, it can do what you want it to do in many different ways. So if you wanted to do, change the screen to blue, well, it can do that in maybe 5 lines of code, or it can do that in 1,500 lines of code. It just depends on how the programmer wants to do it. So there can be a lot of variation of the stakeholders' interpretation and expectations too. Now, I said the color blue. How many shades of blue are there? Too many, right? Now, I'm a guy. When I think blue, I'm thinking the standard blue that you would type blue and there it is on the computer, right? But I'm sure Sarah is probably thinking of 50 different shades of blue, not gray, blue. So yeah. But I mean, but the stakeholder might have meant periwinkle blue. I don't know, I just try to think of some weird shade of blue. Or they might have wanted to think of the hyperlink blue that you might see on web pages. Or, I don't know, the blue ink you might see in a pen, that shade of blue. Or electric blue. So knowing the difference there, and now they might have brought in, let's say, a blue on some object. Well, how do you translate the object's blue to a code that you might see? No problem, Sarah. How do you translate the color of that object to the same color on a computer screen? That's difficult. Change it to a hex number for the computer screen. So anyway, so the wide variation is stakeholder interpretation and expectation. And then the deliverables, they're valuable because you're giving them the increments or the partials so they can see and they can give feedback as it's going. That feedback is the most valuable part. So waterfall, you guys might have heard of waterfall cycle. Waterfall, it might be like a Gantt chart. Have you guys ever heard of Gantt charts? Okay. So Gantt charts generally kind of look like this, where everything is just kind of like, oh, where'd my mouse go? Kind of like tumbling down, and then finally like drops off. But this is agile, where they got multiple. If I can get back. Let's see. Well, here we have one waterfall. But over here, we essentially have a waterfall here, a waterfall here, a waterfall here. So agile technically is multiple waterfalls at the same time, or happening over and over and over. So the predictive is just one giant Gantt chart, where agile is a Gantt chart that falls into another Gantt chart, that falls into another Gantt chart, as many times as it takes until there's that final deliverable. All right. Let me catch up on my paperwork here. Yep. Okay. Let's see. So yeah, we have our planning, executing, and our monitoring and control phases. So that's what we have going on here. The MC is monitoring control, P is planning, and the E is executing. We also have initiating and closing. So we see all of the phases happening at once, or on the screen here. So yeah. We're getting close to the end, so I know it's kind of rough. It's, let's see. I think maybe only about 10 slides left, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, maybe about 15. But we're one less. No. The agile life cycle, you guys might have heard it as Scrum in the past. You might have heard of Scrum Masters. Scrum was really popular in the past because it was iteration-based agile. So it's brief, time-boxed iterations or sprints. So 2 to 4 weeks, they would do this. And they would have a regular meeting at each iteration. So we have flow-based agile, so different types of agile here. The Kanban method would focus on work in progress. They would put limits on that. They wouldn't have 50 things going on at the same time. They would put a limit on that. So instead of 50, they might make it 5. Only 5 things can be worked on at a time, which actually sounds like a great idea sometimes, right? We, as a society, we have way too much going on normally in our own lives. Just think if you just said, I'm only doing 5 things or 10 things, and that was it. You know, once you got down to 4 or 9 or whatever, 1 less than your max, then you could add something new. So we can add new features in continuous flow as prior features have been completed. Are we going to see examples sometime in this process? I don't think they got anything in our slides, to be honest. There, I don't see anything in the upcoming slides, Joseph. No. So I'll definitely make that feedback to the publisher, though.
Not a big deal.
Well, no, I mean, you bringing it up, that means it was a big enough deal for you to mention it. So I'll pass that along anyway. The worst thing they can do is nothing, and then we're not any worse off. So it'll just take me an extra 5 minutes to send an email. Okay. At the end of the iteration, or the selected points in the flow, the deliveries are ready for review. So if it's software, we might have a stable release, or it's complete or finished. The product owner or the sponsor reviews to provide feedback or accept or reject it. And then retrospective, replenish, reviews work and sets an improvement action plan. So in this example here, we have these sprints. So my understanding of these, of Scrum, is these sprints are only a couple days long, and they're to get a like a small thing done, and then you kind of like have a little celebration done. But you see here, framework deliverables, basic deliverables, deliverable features, final. You know, so you're trying to accomplish a little bit at a time by doing these sprints. And then you had something, Derek?
Well, I was going to say, if we need a real life example, we do this within our company, not on the implementation side, but on the product side. So, like, if we want a new feature, so let's say we need a bank reconciliation feature built into the product to help reconcile the bank. So, you know, we pull out the requirements, say, hey, we need this new feature. Here's what it needs to do. It needs to do these 10 things. The developers have 2 weeks to develop this. At the end of the 2 weeks, we have a sprint review. And then they show it off, kind of like what you mentioned. And they say, okay, here is the bank reconciliation. Here are the 5 requirements that it meets. And then the stakeholders, so the implementation team, says, oh, this is okay, except it takes us 20 clicks to do this and 5 clicks to do this and 6 clicks to do this. And ultimately, we're still out of balance. So the developers say, okay, so we need 5 more requirements that say less clicks here, an easier readable format here, and it needs to be in balance. Take 2 more weeks, go back to development. Developers say, okay, into the sprint, here's the new bank reconciliation screen. It's in balance. It takes 1 click to balance. It has these 2 new features. Is this acceptable? Yes or no? And then it moves on.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be, I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, yeah, that's a great example. I should remember that one. So does that help you out, Joseph, with as an example? Excellent. Cool. So thank you for that, Derek.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, so I don't have software background, so and especially on Scrum and Agile, I'm kind of lacking in that area. I'll be the first one to admit, second one to admit, and the third one to admit. So, you know, me, myself, and I to admit that one. So project phases. So phases, you know, it's, you know, the definition here, a collection of logically related project activities that culminates in the completion of one or more deliverables. So here's that lexicon stuff that we were kind of dreading, you know, written by academics for academics kind of thing. But so with the predictive approach, we use major subdivisions. And we use it to control work as kind of like a phase gate. So if we're going to be moving from, let's say, working on that, let's say that reconciling feature, we want to get that done before we start moving on to the next feature. We might make that reconciling feature a phase. We could do that because that's a major subdivision. And then the next feature might be another subdivision. We could do that. We could have as many subdivisions as we want or as few as we want. We don't want to get down into the weeds on it, though. One thing that I tell students is when we do the work breakdown structure, which we'll talk about in other classes, is don't go when we're going into major subdivisions and let's say tasks, when we're breaking down something we need to do, don't go less than your time increment that your time frame is. So if you're working with days, don't go lower than days. If you're working with weeks, don't go less than weeks on how far you break something down. If that makes sense. All right. So Agile, we have the iterations or sprints. So just like Derek mentioned about that reconciliation, they did a sprint to make that reconciliation feature. Then they did a review of that sprint and found that there needed to be some changes. And then they took it back or they made some more requirements, and then they took it back and did another sprint to change those. So they use those iterations and sprints as their divisions of that work. So it's to integrate a project's incremental product, service, or result into a release for feedback or use in operations. So if it went to that sprint review and it was good, that feature probably would have been handed over to the operations team and then incorporated into the product, because it would have met all the requirements. Everybody would have been happy and it would have been handed over. But it wasn't, so it got handed back to the developers to make some changes in Derek's example. So, all right. So what are the phases in project life cycles? It depends. I mean, there's no ideal structure that will apply to all projects. It's really a case-by-case situation. Phase-to-phase relationships. Now, this is how you move from one to the next. We can have our traditional sequential. You go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. The first phase begins only after the prior phase is complete. This is also known as a finish to start. You have to finish the first one to move on to the start of the next one. So sometimes you'll see an F-S, finish to start. Some software you'll see it like that. Microsoft Project, you'll see it put in there like that. And you'll see it most commonly like that. Now, we do have some overlapping and parallel ones. So this is the parallel ones. So you can have two phases going on at the same time. They could start simultaneously. They could end at the same time in parallel, depending on what the criteria is. So they overlap, meaning they're just being done at the same time. Parallel, just they're running concurrently. So this is it really comes down to your resources, your people, your deliverables, what's going on the parallel or overlapping. So sequential, one finishes before another one starts, or they happen at the same time. So question here, what life cycle would be best to use if the deliverable is well understood? Well understood is the key phrase there. Okay, we got 2 for predictive. Derek, you want to give your thoughts?
Yeah, that's fine. Predictive, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So predictive is the correct answer. So gold stars all around. So predictive is the deliverable is well understood. You've probably done a similar project before. It's the best for projects to have well-defined deliverables and industry practices that are widely accepted, is the saying here. So costs are determined early on. The scope is there. You're given the time. Everything is pretty much established for you. You're just there to not babysit, but you're just there to make sure it finishes. So yeah, excellent. So we have process groups. Now, I mentioned there was 47 different processes under these groups, but we have our initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And you can see their life cycles, or I should say the level of process interaction during the project over time, when they start and when they finish on a project. So this is out of the PMBOK on page 555, if you have the book. If you have the book, it should also have more description on this chart around that page. But yeah, this is a pretty accurate, initiating, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, and closing. Yeah. So let's figure out how many are there. So initiating. So we're defining a new project or a new phase of an existing project by obtaining authorization to start. Somebody has to give permission for the project to begin. So the initiation has two processes. We have to develop a product charter and identify stakeholders. That's the two processes. Pretty easy. But then planning. Planning is the biggest one that really, it says there's 24 processes in here. A lot of emphasis is put on planning in general, because if we plan, we can always go back to the plan when we have issues, because we've already hopefully thought of the issue and developed how we're going to respond to the issue, if that makes sense. Like, for example, in your workplace, you probably have an evacuation plan for a fire if there was the fire alarm was to go off. You probably have those little floor blueprints with where to go, how to leave whatever floor it is. Leads you to the stairs, tells you where to assemble outside, that kind of thing. No one's planning for a fire, but if one does happen, you could just look at that map and figure out how to get from wherever that map is to out of the building. So the planning process group, we're determining detailed requirements of scope, refine the objective, and define the course of action. So the planning has 24 processes, and this is the greatest number of processes in our process group, our process categories. So collectively, the output is the project management plan. Collectively, that's what it is. So this includes all aspects of project work. You had a question, Joseph?
Oh, I was going to ask you, do you have a couple examples of what some of those 24 processes might be? Just one or two.
So a communication plan So how are you going to communicate with the public?
Okay.
How are you going to communicate with stakeholders? Stuff like that.
Okay.
And that's just one. Let's see here. A change order plan. How are you going to deal with, or change management plan?
Okay.
That kind of stuff. If you can define these things early. Now, not every project is going to need all 24. And if you might be able to take somebody else's plan and just say, oh, that was a good one. I'm going to take that one and use it as mine. So you don't have to start from scratch each time.
It's all about plagiarism.
Yeah. Hey, if someone else did all the work, you can benefit from it. It's your own company, right? I mean,
absolutely.
So why reinvent the wheel? I mean, somebody already perfected it. Use it. Why should you go out there and chisel a stone and make it a circle again when someone else has already made it? Yeah. So I'm all about that. But I also know if I do something good, someone else can use it. Why should I hoard it and not let someone else use it? But that's me. So executing. So complete the work defined in the project management plan to satisfy the project specifications. So there's 10 processes here. This is the largest portion of the project time, and resources are spent in this process group. So project manager coordinates team activities to ensure that project work is proceeding smoothly. An example of one in here, if I recall correctly, now I wasn't expecting your question on the last one. I should have, but I did not. So bad on me for not being prepared for anticipating your question. I think a human resources plan might fall under this. How are you going to get people to be on your project? What process, or how are you going to do that? Are you going to talk to their functional manager and say, hey, I need people to do this? Or are you just going to talk to human resources and they're going to get people for you? As an example of a process that might be under executing. I'm not 100% sure on that. So I'm trying to remember the 47 groups. And I'm not remembering very well, to be honest. I pull out the book, and unfortunately, my colleague still has my book. And I texted him on our break and said, "Hey, I need my book back," because I recycled that 800 pages that I accidentally printed. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's 10 processes here. So, I think how meetings are conducted, might also be one of these processes. Because we've all been in those meetings where we're like, why are we having a meeting again about this? Like when Sarah joined, she's like, I hate Zoom. And I understand, but I can't justify having Sarah drive from Pittsburgh to Morgantown for a 3-hour class when the trip itself is going to be 3 to 4 hours round trip. I just can't justify that.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, I mean, Derek, I don't recall where you were located. I remember Joseph was in Morgantown.
I'm in Buchanan.
Buchanan. I'm not familiar where that is.
Oh, Weston, about an hour south of Morgantown.
Okay. I'm familiar with Clarksburg and.
Oh yeah, it's just below Clarksburg, about 40 minutes south of Clarksburg.
Okay. I'm still trying to learn geography around the area here, although I've been here almost 2 years. So.
Yeah, you got it. Strawberry Festival, Joseph said. Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm sure my wife would want to go to the Strawberry Festival. So.
Well, not this year. They're scaling it back. But next year.
Okay, next year, Strawberry Festival. I'll have to make a note. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I can't see having you guys drive that far for a class and when we have this technology that's free. At least free for you guys. I mean, the university paid for me to have a license, but anyway, we're getting off track, or I'm getting off track. You guys are on track. So
to get you off track just a little bit more, will we be going into like techniques for execution, like whether it's the proper way or the best ways or techniques to hold meetings, and also like techniques to motivate I'm thinking clients, but motivate project participants?
Well, I mean, you could, shock collars always work, or tasers, but I mean, just in general, keeping meetings to the point. I mean,
Right.
we've all been in meetings where they just like, we don't need to be talking about this. This could have been handled by email. I've been in meetings where the chairs were physically removed from the conference room, so everybody had to stand, and that's what made the meeting short, because everybody was standing, and so that prevented the meeting from going longer than it needed to be. That was one way, but that doesn't work for everybody. And especially if somebody had an ADA requirement, or disability, I'd have to check into the material. I don't recall if anything's like that.
Okay, that's fine.
But going into getting the team's buy-in, like the motivation to like why the project is happening, the business case. Why is the company putting money and effort into doing this project? Having everybody understand the why. And that way they can get the buy-in. They understand that, they support it. And that's usually in the project charter. And the first, like the opening meeting, or the motivational meeting, the pep meeting, or whatever you want to call it, in the beginning, having that executive come down and say, hey, this project, we're all motivated because this is going to have this kind of impact. Getting somebody come down and show that there's support from the executive level or a senior level position always helps. Because most of the time you don't see executives walking around. They're off in some ivory tower somewhere, and you generally don't see them. Now, that's not the case for every company, but having them come down to a meeting with, let's say one of the newest people of the company that just happened to draw the short straw and is now on your team, they get to see a vice president of such and such, who's the project sponsor, for the company. Now they get to maybe shake hands with that vice president, and they've been at the company for less than a month. It kind of puts more of a personal touch, that the executive office or the C-suites support the plan. I mean, that's just one way. I'm not one of those guys that's going to go out and do that team building junk. That's my opinion of it. But some people really love that. They love that team building stuff. So, but I mean, if you say team building is going out and playing paintball, yeah, I'll go. So, donuts always helps, as Joseph's putting in there. Food always brings people together, and not just like Papa John's pizza. Spend a little bit of money and get something a little nicer. I mean, we've probably had way too much pizza at meetings before, right? So, my 2 cents.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, we are now on to monitoring and controlling process group. So track, review, and regulate the process and performance of the project. Identify where changes are required and initiate the changes. So there's 12 processes under this group, and this process runs concurrently with the others. So monitoring and controlling happens throughout the entire project. It's not such a big thing at the beginning, and it kind of dies off towards the end because you're getting towards a closing phase. But the project manager confirms the deliverables conform to the scope and requirements are acceptable to the customer. That's really what this is all about. If it's not, the monitoring and controlling, there might be someone in charge of this they can put in a change order to change something to get it back on track. So the change request or change order or whatever the company calls it, it might change a requirement that will trickle down to the people actually doing the work, and then they start heading in the right direction. Because maybe there was an interpretation that wasn't quite accurate or whatnot. So this change management process can fall in here, but it also can fall in that planning phase too. So, all right. And then finally, we have the closing process group. So closing just has one process, closing. So we're finalizing all the activities across all process groups to formally close the project or the phase. We're turning the project or service over to the customer and supporting the transition into operations as needed. We're completing the administrative work. This might be performance reviews. If someone was on the team and you need to do a performance review to cover the time they were working under you as a project manager, so that time is covered when they go back to their department. Includes closing out budget accounts, making sure all the bills got paid, that there's nothing hanging out there, because maybe that funding line is going to go away. And so if another bill comes in, there might not be a budget line item anymore to pay it, or there might not be a budget to pay that bill anymore. So the closing process group can last, let's say, another 60 days after the project technically is done, because of, let's say, billing and stuff needs to be done. So this must be done for projects that are completed, terminated, or indefinitely postponed. So like we kind of talked about earlier, some projects need to be terminated. Don't throw more money at them just to save it. It might have been a bad project to begin with, and money is not the answer. It might be just better to terminate the project or indefinitely postpone to rework the statement of work, the project charter, whatever it needs to be fixed, so it can move on to be better. All right. So which process group is where the majority of project time is spent? Project time. All right, so we got 3 different answers here. So we got Sarah with monitoring and controlling, Derek with execution, and Joseph with what is planning for, well, there was no dollar amount on this Jeopardy board. So the answer is C, executing. So the largest portion of the project time and resources is spent in execution, because as the project manager, you're directing and managing the work process. Planning, there's a lot of processes under that. That's the largest one for processes. Monitoring and controlling is, I mean, that's going on the entire project, but it's not taking up the majority of time. That's more of taking a look every so often and checking to see how things are going. Making sure everything is, let's say, complying with the specifications of the project. Making sure it's within the scope, making sure things are on budget, within the schedule, that kind of thing. So it's not like someone is sitting there constantly doing that. It might be once a week, someone's spending an hour to check the budget and stuff, that kind of thing, where the execution is what's taking the majority of the time.
A part of execution where I could see where it takes the longest is based upon my own personal experience is when you have problems. You have to work out through those problems. You have to get stakeholder agreement, what the end result will be. That takes a lot of effort.
Yes. Yeah. Risk is the problem. Yeah. We'll be talking about risk, because if you can imagine it going wrong, it could go wrong that way. I mean, the building catching on fire, and then a meteor hitting it, and then an ice storm happening right after that. I mean, it could happen. It might be extremely unlikely, and so unlikely you don't need to worry about it, but you might need to plan for it as a potential risk. It'd just be so far down in your risk priority matrix, though. But yeah, we'll be talking about risk. Yeah, that's a good one, Joseph. But yeah, those always sneak up problems. So it's so these last few slides are going to talk about Agile. So we're going to be, all right, so we're on number 36. We're only going to slide 42, and then we're done for the night. So, well, you guys okay to power through that? I know it's already about 8:52, so. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. All right, Agile Manifesto. So like I mentioned earlier, the Agile Manifesto was basically trying to bring Agile together. So we're uncovering better ways to develop software. Now, software is the biggest user of Agile, as I've mentioned, and hopefully you guys have caught on that I keep mentioning software. And it's so we're looking at individuals and interactions over the processes and tools. That's what Agile, the Agile Manifesto is focused on, the individuals and the interactions. And it also focuses on working software over comprehensive documentation. Who cares about the owner's manual if the software works? That help file, who looks at the help file? We just want the software to work. Customer collaboration over a contract negotiation. And then responding to change over following a plan. Because if we follow the plan, are we collaborating with the customer more, or are we just following a contract? So there is value to the items on the right that are not bold. The Agile Manifesto values the bold words more than what's on the right. So Agile projects, they have some principles. So the highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So like Derek's example of reconciliation software. What's the point of reconciliation software if it doesn't reconcile correctly? It's kind of pointless. You might as well just break out a pen and paper and reconcile it yourself. If that software didn't do it right. Too many clicks, yeah, people are going to get frustrated. If there's too many clicks, then people won't understand where to go. So, number 2 here, welcoming changing requirements, even late in development. Changing requirements means your customer knows what they want, and they're telling you what they want. So you want to make your customer happy. So your customer, you're making your customer happy, which will make them have that competitive advantage. So let's see. Delivering that working software frequently will let your customer push out those working features. So a lot of people are kind of getting used to the annual updates on software. But more and more companies are starting to go to quarterly updates, quarterly major updates of software. For example, a software package, SAP, they do quarterly updates. And I think a major yearly update, but there's quarterly updates with that software also. But our society is becoming more and more of a now society. We want things updated now. We want the changes now. We don't want to wait 3 months. We want it next week. We want it now. Amazon Prime, Walmart Plus, all these things. We want the stuff now. We don't want to wait. So these software developers or software vendors are trying to meet that need by using Agile to get that stuff to us. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. As a business person myself, I don't really understand software development. I just know there's coding that's involved and it magically works. I can do basic, 10, 20, 30, that kind of stuff. But other than that, that's about my level of programming. I really, show me what works. I don't need to know the background of it. If it works, cool, let's do it. If not, keep working on it till it's done, until it does. I don't need to see something in the middle until it does work, but that's me. But there's other people that want to do that. They want to see what's going on. So, but I agree, need to work together. Because if I can tell them I don't like those colors, or I changed my mind, I wanted to do it this, wanted to do this. I want to be able to tell them that. I don't want them to be across the world in another country, and then I have to wait until a certain time frame to tell them what I want changed. I just wasted my money. Build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. Yeah. I'll give you the requirements that I want. And as developers, tell me what you need to get it done. You need, a computer that meets these requirements, I'll get it to you. You need a coffee machine, sure. I'll, as a supply guy with a supply guy background, I'll give you what you need to get the job done. Because I want whatever you can provide that I can't provide myself, and you love coding, or that's what you're trained to do and you like doing it, I'll let you do that. And I want you to do that because I want what you'll produce. At least that's how I see it. Most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. I agree. Email, it's kind of like a fire and forget thing. Text messaging, back and forth enough, it's rather just have a phone call. And phone call, sometimes you just need to write stuff down, show people, like draw a picture of what you want. So face-to-face conversation is better. And if you want to strangle them, you can too, right? Yeah. You can't do that over a phone call as much as you might want to. All right. Working software is a primary measure of progress. Yes, I agree with that. Right? Software that doesn't work is just a bunch of ones and zeros. It's not worth it. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Yeah. Sustainable development. I'll keep giving them Red Bull and coffee and, whatever other caffeine infused stuff. So they just keep plugging away. Yeah, I can do that. I'll order in lunch for them, or dinner and breakfast and all that, and they can keep on going. I'm making a joke, but yeah. But yeah, if they can keep producing, I'll give them everything they need. But yeah, sustainable development. The only time this might be adjusted is when somebody leaves the team or there's a new person that gets added to the team, because then you have that the team dynamics. They got to suffer the loss of somebody, and then they got to somehow bring a new person in. So that person has to learn the team dynamic and see how they can fit in. So, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Yeah. So one thing in software that I do know is every developer has their style of writing software code, but there's also a pride in using the least amount of code to write the software. So if you can write it in 100 lines of code rather than 1,000 lines, you can take pride in that. And you have that technical excellence because you were able to do the same thing that took someone else 1,000 lines that you did in 100 lines. But is it good design? So simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. Yeah. So that person who wrote 100 lines of code instead of 1,000, well, now they can do that 10 times and do this 10 times as much work or 9 times more work than the person who did 1,000 lines of code. So they could be 900 times more productive than that other person because they are being simplicity. Having to click 20 times to reconcile a bank account. No, it should be maybe 3 clicks or 4 or 5. I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar with what software that is and don't need to be, but it should not be 20. I mean, 20, you're going to get lost somewhere. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Yeah, if you get a team together, someone is going to become the natural leader of that team, regardless of their position or whatnot. Somebody will become a natural leader. And the requirements, well, you can tell them the requirements, and they're maybe naturally going to divide up those requirements based on their own skills. The designs, they probably will go ahead and come up with designs on their own that might impress you based on what you were talking about, what you would like to see, and everybody interpreted that differently. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. This just happens naturally with teams. If they've been working together long enough, they'll tune themselves to each other. But they may come together and talk about it, or they may not. But hopefully they do. They learn about each other. They go out for a beer or whatever, and they learn. Maybe they learn that, maybe developer John hates writing this type of code, but developer Susan loves writing that. So the team can figure out whenever that type of code needs to be written, Susan writes it and John doesn't even bother with it. Could be something like that. So having that agile mindset. So we only got a couple slides left here. If you embrace the manifesto and its principles, you can tell if a framework fits in the agile mindset. Pick the best framework, such as Scrum, for a project, motivated team, a culture, or team's reflections. So there's a lot of different agile mindset or agile frameworks out there. Scrum is just one of them. So some companies have just picked one because it was popular at the time, but there could be another one that's better for that company's environment, the culture of the company, but they don't look because they've just adopted Scrum or Kanban or some other form and just stopped looking. So if they were to look, they might find one better. But you got to remember your customer. We got to prioritize their needs. Learn the customer's needs by working together daily with your customer. And that customer has to have that deep level of commitment. When you make a phone call to your customer, they should answer it. If you call them at 3 o'clock in the morning, They should answer it because they should be that committed to it. Hopefully that's, you're not making a phone call at 3:00 in the morning, but they should be that committed. So high uncertainty work contracts need flexibility. Lawyers hate flexible contracts. They hate it because if it does need to go to court, flexible contracts are very difficult to enforce. But Agile, you need that flexibility in the contract because of the nature of Agile. So it's you might have to talk to your legal department depending on how that contract's written. If you're going out there, if you're outsourcing to an Agile company, they probably have a contract that you want your legal team to review. And maybe that might be the best way to go. Always review those contracts. So the project roles, usually you have a project owner. In the Scrum, you have a Scrum master or a servant leader. And then you have cross-functional team members. Product owner is a customer representative committed to daily interaction with the team, provides feedback and task priority, develops plans such as high-level roadmaps. They know what they want, or at least a general idea of what they want. The Scrum Master is the project manager in the Scrum Agile system. And they have that Agile mindset. Servant leader, they facilitate, they problem solve, enforce use of Agile framework as tailored. So to the system that's being used. Then you have your cross-functional team members. They come from all your specialties that are needed for your team. Technical specialists, broad base of skills to help others, your generalists, plan your own work, coordinate, communicate, just a generalist that knows what they're doing. Ceremonies. So you have your iteration, sprint planning, or backlog grooming. You have your daily stand-ups. So these are stand-up meetings. You're physically standing up. Demonstrations. So you're actually demoing your thing. And retrospectives. So looking back upon what you've done. So your backlog grooming, you're taking a look, see what should be done next. Or your sprint planning, same thing. Trying to plan your next sprint. What are you going to focus on next? So I know I'm kind of picking up the speed here. Are you guys okay so far? Okay. All right. So the last slide of the night, Kanban boards. So this empowers a team, but it may be because it limits the size of the backlog or your work in progress. So you'll have a backlog column. These are all the things that need to be done. You have your work in progress column. So develop and unit test, completed, system test. So, and then you have your done column. So you have only a limited number of things that you're working on at one time. So your backlog is stuff that you are not working on yet, but you need to get to. Your work in progress is stuff you're working on now, and then you're done. Stuff you're ready for delivery, you're not touching anymore. You're about to give to your customer. So, and the team picks what moves from the backlog into the work in progress. So a little bit different. So Kanban is a Japanese word. So it's a visual signal. That's what it means. So, okay. That's the last slide that I'm covering tonight. All right. So about 3 hours. How'd you guys feel first night?
Not so bad.
Not so bad. You can do this, right?
Yeah.
I think
All right.
Tuesdays will be Red Bull night.
No Red Bull after 7, right? So you got to get some sleep that night. All right. So let's see. So Tuesday's moving forward. I'm going to get the PMI lexicon, try to send that out to you guys. I'm going to call PMI and find out the 36 months of experience in the last how many years. Try to get a definitive number on that. And then I'll send that out. I'll try to send that out at the same time with the lexicon tomorrow. And I'll send to the publisher, see if they can put some examples in the slides that Joseph mentioned. So anything else that I need to follow up with you guys? So I'll send a calendar invite for Tuesdays. That way you guys can add it to your calendars if you have not already. That way you'll have the link already in there because I'll put it in the location so you can just click on it. But yeah, any last minute things?
Nope.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you guys coming. So Joseph, Derek, Sarah, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
looking forward to Tuesday.
Yep.
Everybody
Thank
have a
you.
good night.
Take care.
Good night. Bye.
Bye, guys.